Raised as a conservative Republican. When I first registered to vote, I registered as a Republican. I was a registered Republican for 8 to 10 years, and I will never go back to being conservative under any circumstances, and I will tell you the number one reason. Every single conservative ideology I've ever partaken in, whether it be an online space, a local discussion, or tons of conversation with my very conservative friends and family, miss the mark of who humans are and how they operate. I'll illustrate this best with a story. So one of my dear friends works in marketing. Her only job in marketing is to make sure that grocery store products end up on grocery store end caps. Sometimes it's a product that's on sale. Oftentimes it's a new product that's being featured. Anyway, her only job is getting products featured on that end cap. Her job is actually negotiating what payment is going to take place. Brands like General Mills, Pepperidge Farms, name any huge brand, Coca-Cola, pay huge dollars to have their products featured on the end cap. And the reason they shell out this enormous amount of money is because the end caps are where the most money is made. It turns out grocery store consumers aren't complicated people. They reach for what's easiest, and what's easiest is on the end caps. Corporations understand this. They understand it really well, so they fight tooth and nail. They pay for grocery store chains to feature their products, and they have entire marketing teams dedicated to getting their products featured there. Because they know humans aren't a product of individual choices. They know most oftentimes, humans are defaulting to something that's easiest, the end cap. This is also really well illustrated in tons of studies that have been done on Americans who struggle with obesity or weight. Without any weight enhancement drugs whatsoever, when you take Americans that are struggling with their weight and you plop them in Japan, in cities in Spain, says that it's walkable and the food system is better, those Americans automatically lose weight. Those Americans automatically begin to meet all kinds of healthy benchmarks, blood pressure, diabetes, all those things improve without any drugs. And the reason it improves isn't because those Americans suddenly developed discipline. It's not because those Americans suddenly became better with their own habits. They just joined a place that had designed infrastructure for humans to naturally make healthier choices. The lived environment is designed for human thriving. Suddenly, those Americans who moved very little at home are taking 10,000, 20,000 steps a day. Somehow those Americans who ate very poor diets in America are now living in places where processed foods are harder to find and fresh foods are easier to find, so they're eating better. But they didn't develop individually more disciplined. They're just in a place where making better decisions is easier. And this is why I will never be a conservative again, because all of the conservatives I interact with, all of the discourse in online conservative spaces completely forsakes this absolute truth in favor of the delusion that human beings are a product of their individual choices. It completely forsakes the idea that we are all like seedlings in a soil and our health is most accurately determined by the health of our surroundings, by the health of that soil. And as a result, conservatives spend very little time making sure that that environment improves. This is exactly right. Right-leaning conservative Republican public policy is so bad, they have to create boogeymen to attack, because otherwise people would focus on the policies they're making and just realize, oh my goodness, this public policy is so bad for most people. And that's one thing I've noticed about my conservative friends and being in conservative circles. Conservatives most often online will say like, oh, liberals are just like sheep, they're just snowflakes, they're just like, they all say the same things. But it's so interesting because I find that to be the complete opposite. When my conservative friends will literally like pivot from week to week, month to month on their talking points. Suddenly they're all saying the same things. And my conservative friends live all over the country, and I'll have a conversation with them and suddenly they're all at the same time worried about CRT, critical race theory. Like all of a sudden, all of them were talking about critical race theory. And I was like, wow, you guys all have the same concern all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden they'll pivot to trans rights, trans people. Oh my gosh, trans people are everywhere. And suddenly they'll be very concerned with that. It's almost like they're like dogs on a leash and they're just being like whipped back and forth to these boogeymen. You have to be scared of boogeymen. You have to be scared of problems that don't necessarily exist, because if you actually looked at right-leaning public policy, it is bad for the populace. It is bad for the people. So we're attacking DEI. That's the bad thing. That's the boogeyman. And of course, there's a lot of things you're usually attacking at once, but they have to generate a new problem. Immigrants, of course, let's go after that. Otherwise, you have to actually look at right-wing, specifically economic policy and realize, holy shit, this is really bad for people.